They sent me the invitation, then they sent the message asking me not to come. It arrived on a Tuesday. Thick paper cream-colored with gold trim like the kind used for weddings or old money funerals. The front read, Whitmore Family Reunion, June 8, 6:45 p.m. Elan Easton Hotel. My fingers hesitated at the seal, but I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I'd seen that hotel name before. Many, many times. That was my signature on the bottom of their booking contract. Before I could turn the envelope over, my phone buzzed. A message from Sophie, my cousin, the one always tasked with planning things and soft landings. I already knew what it would say. Claire just wanted to reach out before you open the invite. The venue's really tight on space this year. We've got a lot of out-of-town guests and a formal setup, governors, friends of granddad's. You know, it's going to be elevated. I hope you understand. Maybe next year, that emoji at the end. That little red heart. It was the punctuation mark of people who wanted to look kind while cutting you out. No confrontation, just a soft removal. This wasn't the first time Christmas cards with my name left out. Family group emails that skipped over career updates when it came to me. They didn't argue with me, they just airbrushed me out of the frame. They said I was hard to place, that my path was non-traditional, that I was doing my own thing. They meant, you don't make us look good anymore. I walked back into my office. The city glowed outside the tall glass windows, Manhattan early summer golden haze along the river. On my desk sat the signed event packet for the Whitmore reunion, Elan Easton Hotel. Sophie had booked it through our corporate site like any other client. The events coordinator forwarded it to me for approval. I'd raised the internal rate, 20%. Approved it myself. They didn't know that C.E. Whitmore, CEO of Elan Group, owner of 17 boutique hotels across 4 countries, was me. They didn't know that the girl who once cleaned rooms and folded towels for minimum wage now signed off on their catering preferences. They didn't even know I still used the Whitmore name. That's the funny part. I didn't want to go. I didn't need their approval, but I wasn't going to let them keep writing this version of me that suited their comfort, the one that had quietly disappeared. I turned toward the bookshelf and reached for the small black frame. Inside it, a plastic name tag, Claire, Housekeeping Brooklyn, 2012. I hadn't looked at it in years, but that night I left it on the desk, dead center, just in case I forgot why I had said yes to myself when they had said no. My father used to say there were 2 kinds of people in this world, those who carry the name and those who carry the weight. He said it after Sunday dinners when he loosened his tie and poured his second bourbon when we were all expected to nod as he held court. I was 12 the first time I understood which one I was. Not the name, just the weight. By the time I turned 22, I was supposed to have joined the Whitmore Group, our family's investment firm. There was an office waiting. My name already engraved on the door, Claire Whitmore, Strategy Associate. It lasted 3 months, not because I wasn't capable, but because I asked too many questions about people. No one wanted to think about housekeepers, doormen, the hotel staff whose pensions our firm had quietly restructured out of existence. You think too small, my father snapped during one of our last conversations. You have no vision. He said it after I told him I wanted to leave finance and go into hospitality. You want to carry luggage for a living? No, I told him. I want to understand what people carry. That was the last time we spoke with any real honesty. After that, it was a long silence, measured in skipped birthdays, unanswered emails, and formal greetings sent through cousins like couriers. I went to Cornell, studied hotel management, graduated with honors. I thought maybe someone would show up to the ceremony. They didn't. A year later, I was working in Brooklyn. My first job room attendant at a small 3-star hotel off Atlantic Avenue. 8 floors, no elevator service towels that smelled faintly of bleach and old lemon. I cleaned 24 rooms a day. I learned to make a bed fast and tight, the corners crisp like hospital sheets. I scrubbed bathtubs while humming Patsy Cline under my breath. I said, "Yes, sir," and "Of course, ma'am," and smiled through every complaint about thread counts and parking fees. And I loved it because it was mine, earned, not inherited. That's when Sophie sent me that photo, a group picture from her wedding. Everyone smiling in pearls and navy blue. I wasn't in it. I had been there. I'd sat near the kitchen at a table with 2 servers on break and a florist who left early. She told me it was because I probably felt more comfortable there. 2 days later, someone forwarded me a screenshot from the family group chat. A photo of my housekeeping name tag, captioned, "She wanted to clean toilets. Guess she got what she wished for." They laughed. No one defended me. Not even Aunt Mavis, who used to slip me hard candy and whisper, "You don't have to be like them." I learned something that day. You don't have to be erased violently. You just have to be cropped out of enough photos left off, enough emails, seated far enough from the center of the room. Eventually, even you start to wonder if you were ever really there. So, I made peace with it. I stopped waiting to be remembered. And I started building something that couldn't be ignored. I moved to Vermont with a suitcase, a second-hand laptop, and just enough money to last me 3 months. It wasn't part of a plan. Not exactly. I just needed somewhere quiet to think. Somewhere nobody knew my last name or what it used to mean. I rented the back room of an old farmhouse that had been converted into guest lodging. The floorboards creaked, the heating was uneven, and the owners, a retired couple named May and Ron, paid me in cash to manage bookings and clean the rooms. They gave me room 4, the smallest one. Sloped ceiling, 1 window, twin bed. I loved it immediately. That was where Elan began, not the hotel. The idea. It started with a notebook, just scribbles at first. Observations, questions. Why did guests return to some places and not others? Why did some staff stay for years while others quit in a week? Why did tired people, grieving people on the edge walk into certain rooms and feel safe, while others made them feel like intruders? I watched everything. I wrote it all down, then I started improving things. Not by throwing money at problems, there was no money to throw, but by noticing what others didn't. A lamp that buzzed when it shouldn't. A bed frame that needed to be shifted 2 inches so a tall guest wouldn't bang their knee. A homemade sign by the front door that confused guests when they arrived, so I redesigned it in Word and printed it on heavy cardstock. Small things, but they mattered. The guests started asking for me by name. Claire, not Miss Whitmore. Just Claire. When May and Ron decided to sell the place, I made them an offer, not a large one, but I came with spreadsheets. Loyalty data, a 3-year plan. They said yes. I rebranded it as Elan House, my first property. 5 rooms, no staff but me. But I gave it everything. New linens, fresh paint. A welcome card in every room, handwritten. "You're here. Now. You can rest." People remembered that line. I didn't have a marketing team. I didn't need one. Word of mouth brought the next round of guests. Guests brought stories. Stories brought investors. Not many at first, just enough. Within 4 years, I opened a second location, then a third. I hired former housekeepers as managers, paid them above standard. No uniforms, no plastic smiles, only people who knew what it meant to serve without being stepped on. By the time I turned 30, Elan had become a name in its own quiet way. Small luxury, understated comfort. Hospitality without the glitter or the groveling. But still, I didn't use mine. Not publicly. All the properties were registered under C.E. Whitmore Holdings, which most people assumed stood for a man. That was fine with me. Let them think it. I wasn't hiding, I was choosing silence. It gave me room to build without their noise. But in my office behind the bookshelf tucked between books of linen samples and scent profiles, I kept the name tag, Claire, housekeeping. The plastic was scratched. The lettering faded. I'd worn it long after it cracked. I framed it. Black wood. No glass. I didn't hang it on a wall. I didn't display it for guests. I didn't tell my staff about it. But some nights when the last email was sent and the last decision made, I'd take it down and hold it in my hand. Not to remember how they mocked me, but to remember what I had built when no one was looking. I didn't build Elan to get even. I built it to have a place where no one would ask me to leave. They'd chosen Elan Easton for the reunion. Of all the hotels in the state, they picked mine. They didn't know it, of course. Sophie booked through the usual corporate channel, bragging in the group email about pulling strings to secure such a sought-after venue. "We're lucky," she wrote. The manager said, "The owner is very private, but once they heard our family name, they fast-tracked our request." I had fast-tracked it all right. I bumped them into a higher service tier, increased staffing, custom linens, and I approved it personally digitally. Of course, I never signed anything by hand anymore. It's easier to keep quiet when you don't leave fingerprints. The booking name, Red Whitmore Family Reunion. 82 guests requested by Sophie Delacroix. Nay Whitmore. Event type. Private heritage, dinner billing. Contact, E. Whitmore. The irony was sharp enough to slice through granite. I instructed our guest relations manager, Hannah, to handle all communication. She was young, attentive, and beautifully unbothered by family politics she knew nothing about. To her, Sophie was just another client with too many opinions about flower arrangements a week before the event. I called Hannah into my office. "Treat them kindly," I said, but not delicately. She raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Don't handle them like Crystal. Just serve them like anyone else, exactly as they asked to be treated." Hannah smiled. She understood more than I'd said aloud. That night I drafted a brief message to Aunt Mavis. She was the only one I thought might listen, the only one who'd ever truly looked me in the eye when I was little. "If you're going, come at 6:40, don't let them wander in early, it matters." She didn't reply, but the message was marked, "Read." That was enough. For the next 6 days, I didn't sleep much. I reviewed every detail, the room layout, seating, signage, lighting cues. I made sure the signage was just right, subtle, elegant, and precisely timed. At the last minute, I adjusted one small thing. Each guest suite received a welcome card. Normally, it included a printed note from the host family. This time, I replaced it with a single sentence. "We hope your stay reminds you where you come from and what was never truly lost. C.E.W." It wasn't signed in full, but I knew someone would notice. On the day of the reunion, I didn't arrive through the front entrance. I came through the staff hallway, same one I used back in Brooklyn. There's something grounding about moving past crates of dishware and carts of fresh towels before stepping into a ballroom dressed in white hydrangeas and crystal light. It reminds you how much of luxury rests on what stays unseen. I wore navy, no jewelry, hair pinned tight, nothing that said, "Look at me." Everything about the room already would. At 6:45 on the dot, they arrived, first in 2s and 3s, then in larger groups. Laughter too loud, shoes too shiny. That very specific kind of performance that only happens when people who haven't seen each other in years suddenly feel the need to prove they've still got it. Sophie entered like a cruise director, all hand waves and cheek kisses. My father followed 10 minutes later, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize but knew instantly, finance types. All watches and whispering. I watched from a small monitor in the back hallway. No one missed me. That was the beauty of it. They had already told themselves I didn't belong, and so their eyes never searched for me. But that was about to change. At exactly 7:15, the lights dimmed slightly in the ballroom. It was subtle, just enough to hush the chatter. Just enough for people to glance around with polite curiosity. Then came the soft chime, 3 tones, clear and slow. Sophie was mid-sentence about the hand-blown glassware when a hotel manager approached her with a clipboard and a careful smile. "Miss Delacroix," he said gently, "the owner has asked that we begin the welcome presentation now." Sophie blinked. "The owner." "Yes, ma'am." She looked momentarily confused. "I don't think that's necessary. We've already thanked the staff. Besides, I've been in touch with your office for weeks. The owner doesn't do these things." The manager didn't argue. He only turned toward the stage, and then the screen lit up. It took a few seconds for the words to come into focus. Soft white text, elegant serif font against a navy backdrop. Elan Easton, founded by Claire Elizabeth Whitmore. Chief Executive Officer, C.E. Whitmore Group. You could feel the temperature in the room drop by 10 degrees. The champagne flute slipped from Sophie's hand and shattered on the marble. My father's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Someone near the back let out an audible, "Wait, what?" I stepped onto the small landing that overlooked the ballroom. My heels clicked softly as I moved toward the railing. Calm, clean lines, hair pinned tight. I looked exactly like what they'd always claimed I wasn't. I stood still for a moment, letting the silence stretch. Then I spoke steady and unraised. "Good evening. I know many of you didn't expect to see me here tonight. I wasn't invited after all." Laughter. Nervous. Sharp bubbled up from one table and then died. "But I thought it was time someone properly welcomed you to Elan Easton. After all, you're standing in my home." Gasps, whispers, shifting chairs. Sophie stepped forward, red-faced. "Claire, what are you doing?" I met her eyes. "You booked this hotel under your name. You said the owner gave you a courtesy rate because of the Whitmore family name." "That part was true. I gave you exactly what you asked for, plus 20%. My voice didn't shake. That was the victory. You all spent years talking about me like I was something to be embarrassed about, a housekeeper, a dropout, a waste of a name. You told people I disappeared. I looked around the room from table to table. Familiar faces older now, but still fixed in the same old expressions of polite surprise and discomfort. But I didn't disappear. You just stopped looking. My father stood slowly. "Claire," he said, his voice was gruff, unreadable. "You own this hotel, I own 17, I said quietly. "Across 4 countries. He was silent. "And I'm not here for applause," I continued. "I don't want your approval. I came to return something I signaled to Hannah." She and 2 staff members entered from the side, carrying black folders, elegant leather-bound. Each guest received one. Inside a copy of their event contract signed by C.E. Whitmore. Their suite rates. A note that read, "Sometimes the story you try to erase still finds its way to the wall." In the back of the room, I saw Aunt Mavis lift the folder and laugh softly. I turned to leave, but just before I stepped away, an older man near my father stood up, someone I didn't recognize. He asked, not unkindly, "Why didn't you use your full name from the beginning? Why hide?" I paused, because I wanted to build something without anyone deciding what it was before it had a chance to grow. The man nodded. He understood. Maybe more than the others. I walked off the landing. Behind me, the screens faded to black, and for the first time in years, I no longer felt invisible. The ballroom was quieter after that. They stayed, of course. My staff served dinner just as scheduled. The roast duck was perfect. The wine was chilled, the music soft enough to keep people from saying what they really wanted to say. Sophie sat at her table, stiff folding and unfolding her napkin. She didn't look at me again, but I noticed when she reached into her folder and reread the contract. Her mouth moved like she was trying to form a sentence but couldn't. I left before dessert. There was nothing more I needed to hear. Before heading upstairs, I asked the front desk to reroute Sophie's suite. The VIP room she had insisted on, the one she'd made several calls to secure, was reassigned to a diplomat who had coincidentally arrived late and very pregnant. Sophie's new room was still beautiful, but it faced the alley. It was the same type I'd once cleaned for $9.75 an hour. My father never came to find me, but Aunt Mavis did. She knocked on my office door around 11 p.m. I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask. She just passed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph, one I hadn't seen in years. I was maybe 8, standing on the back porch of the old family house, holding a lemonade pitcher with 2 hands. My father's hand was resting on my shoulder. I remember that day, not because of anything big, but because I spilled the lemonade minutes after the photo was taken and thought for sure I'd be yelled at. But no one said a word. They just laughed. That was the last time I remembered feeling like I belonged. On the back of the photo in Mavis's slanted handwriting was one sentence I never forgot. "You were part of us." That was all. She walked away before I could respond. The next morning, I took the elevator to the staff floor. The cleaning team was starting shift. A few nodded. One young woman smiled shyly and looked away. I walked to the old storage room we'd converted into a break space. It still had a coat rack near the back wall. I took the framed name tag from my bag, Claire, housekeeping. I hung it on the rack just above the place where most staff left their jackets. No plaque, no spotlight, just wood and nail. Later that afternoon, Sophie left a note in her room. "You didn't deserve what we did, but I didn't know how to undo it." I didn't answer. But when the reunion emails went out the next year, the return address read claire.e.whitmore@elan.group.